Hey guys, tonight we begin with something unsettling. A story that might crawl under your skin if you let it. It isn't about kings or castles, not about knights or battles. It's about a man, a stranger, who never closed his eyes, who never surrendered to dreams, and the strange, terrifying truth that followed him. So before you settle in, make sure you're comfortable. Maybe dim the lights. Grab a blanket, and if you enjoy these journeys into the unusual, consider subscribing, but only if you genuinely like what I do here. And don't forget to tell me in the comments where in the world you are re-listening from tonight. Now let's begin. The town of Greywick was the kind of place people drove past without remembering its name. A stretch of road, a handful of crooked houses, a general store that always smelled faintly of gasoline, and a diner with flickering neon that buzzed louder than the conversations inside. Most nights, Greywick was as forgettable as the dust that clung to its fences, until the stranger arrived. No one remembered seeing him come into town. Some swore he walked in from the hills at twilight. Others insisted he had stepped off a bus that never stopped there. He didn't introduce himself. He just appeared, sat down in the corner booth of that diner, and ordered coffee. Black. No sugar, no cream. What made people whisper, though, wasn't his silence or the way his coat seemed too heavy for summer. It was his eyes, wide, unblinking as if every second of every day he was watching and watching and watching. The first night, folks thought nothing of it. Travelers passed through Greywick sometimes, though never often. But by the third night, when the stranger still sat in that booth, cup refilled, eyes fixed on something no one else could see, they began to wonder. "Does he ever go to sleep?" asked Marla, the waitress, as she refilled his cup. He didn't answer. He only nodded politely, as though acknowledging the question, without granting it truth. By the fifth night, people were uneasy. The sheriff dropped by, leaning his weight against the counter. "Evenin'," he said, loud enough for the stranger to hear. "You stayin' in town long?" The man looked up. His voice was low, roughened like gravel. "As long as I need to." That was all. No explanation, no smile. It was old Grant, the mechanic, who first swore he saw the man outside at 3 in the morning, just standing in the road, staring at the houses like he was counting them. Grant told anyone who would listen, his hands shaking around his bear, not sleeping, not sitting, just watching, eyes open wide, like a fox waiting by the chicken coop. By the second week, no one had seen him close his eyes, not once, not even to blink for long. Children began daring each other to peek through the diner windows late at night to see if he was still there. He always was, sitting in that same booth, hands folded around a cup that never seemed to cool. And then the dreams began. People in Greywick started to complain. Vivid, unsettling dreams that left them exhausted. Some dreamed of endless corridors where footsteps followed but never caught up. Others of doors that opened into empty rooms except for eyes staring from the dark. The strangest part, many of them had the same dreams. At first no one connected it to the stranger, but then Marla swore she'd dreamt of sitting across from him in the booth, his unblinking gaze drilling into her while clocks melted on the walls. And when she woke, she was already exhausted, like she hadn't slept at all. The town grew restless. Tempers frayed. Work slowed. People avoided the diner, except for the few brave enough to spy on him. And still, he never moved, never slept. Whispers filled Greywick's dusty streets. Some said he was cursed. Others thought he was an angel or a devil, or something in between. Children were told not to speak to him. Dogs barked at him from porches but never crossed the street. Cats went missing. It was the preacher, Reverend Cole, who finally decided to confront him. One sweltering evening, he walked into the diner, Bible under his arm, and stood at the stranger's booth. "Sir," the Reverend said, his voice trembling just slightly, "I don't know what brings you here, but I know this town, and it's unraveling since you came. People can't sleep. Folks are scared. If you've got business here, make it known, and if not, move along." For a long moment, the stranger said nothing. His eyes locked on the Reverend's, sharp as glass, unblinking. Finally, he spoke. "I'm here," he said softly, "because you invited me." The diner fell silent. Reverend Cole blinked. "Invited you? I don't understand." The stranger leaned forward just slightly, shadows deepening around his face. "You'll understand," he said. "Soon." The Reverend left, shaken. And that night, Greywick's dreams turned darker. One woman dreamed she woke to find the stranger standing in her bedroom, watching her sleep. Another swore she saw him at the edge of a field, silhouetted against a sky full of burning stars. And the sheriff. He dreamed of every clock in town stopping at once, the silence so loud it split his ears. By morning, everyone was afraid. But the stranger? He was still there, sitting in the booth, watching. Greywick was unraveling. The little town that once ticked along like a well-wound clock was now stumbling, sleepless, restless, afraid. Work went undone. Crops withered in the heat. Children woke crying in the night, too frightened to explain what they'd seen in their dreams. And still, the stranger sat in his booth. Same coat, same eyes, same coffee cup that never seemed to empty. The sheriff decided it was time for answers. He walked into the diner one morning, hand resting near his holster, though he didn't quite know why. Marla, pale and jittery from another night of half-sleep, just nodded toward the corner booth. "Morning," the sheriff said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Name's Sheriff Lawson. You've been here a while now, and folks are starting to worry. Thought maybe you could tell me what it is you're doing here." The stranger tilted his head. His eyes were so clear they almost seemed colorless, like glass catching the light. "I'm watching," he said simply. The stranger's lips barely curved, a ghost of something that wasn't quite a smile. "You. Because you can't," the stranger whispered. "You can't watch what waits when you sleep." That answer rattled Lawson more than he cared to admit. He left the booth with his jaw tight, muttering something about vagrants. But when he stepped outside, he found 3 townsfolk waiting for him. "You tell him to leave?" Old Grant asked. His face was lined, eyes bloodshot. Lawson hesitated. "Not exactly, but I'll handle it." The others didn't look convinced. And by that evening, more people came knocking on Lawson's door. Farmers, shopkeepers, mothers with tired children. Their message was clear. Do something him out. But how do you drive out a man who never moved, never slept, never seemed to need food or drink? Meanwhile, the dreams grew worse. One boy dreamed of walking into the diner at midnight, only to find every booth filled with dozens of identical strangers. Same face, same eyes, staring at him until his body went cold. Another man dreamed he was buried alive, hearing muffled footsteps above, the scrape of a chair, the clink of a coffee cup. When he clawed his way to the surface in his dream, the stranger was waiting, watching him crawl out of the dirt. No one was rested. No one was safe. It was Marla, always braver than she looked, who tried again. She set the fresh pot of coffee on his table and leaned in. "You're hurting people," she said quietly. Whatever you are, whatever you're doing, it's tearing this town apart. Why don't you just leave? For a moment, his face softened, almost human. His voice dropped. I don't leave because you need me. I didn't call you. Nobody did. His eyes flickered, not like blinking, but like a shadow passing behind glass. The first night you wished you didn't have to dream anymore. That's when I came. Marla froze. The exhaustion, the stress, whispering to herself as she locked the diner doors. God, I wish I could just stop dreaming. Her hands shook as she pulled back the coffee pot. That evening, Reverend Cole called a meeting in the church. Nearly the whole town gathered, pale and weary. They argued. Others were terrified of what might happen if they tried. Finally, Reverend Cole raised his voice above the clamor. He said he was invited. If that's true, then maybe the only way to close it is to stop wishing for him. Stop wishing? Someone scoffed. What the hell does that even mean? But Cole was insistent. If he's feeding on our fears, our exhaustion, our need to escape dreams, then we have to face them. We have to want our sleep back. But desperation was all Greywick had left. People prayed before bed, clinging to the hope of ordinary dreams. Some forced themselves awake with bitter tea, refusing to surrender. Others lay down with whispered promises. I want to sleep. I want to dream. And yet. The next morning he was still in his booth. The same coffee, the same unblinking stare. But this time, something was different. An old brass thing that had ticked steadily for years was frozen. Both hands stuck at exactly 3:03. Marla tapped the glass. Nothing. And for the first time since he'd arrived, the stranger's lips curled into something unmistakable. The broken clock rattled Greywick to its bones. No one in town could remember a day when it hadn't ticked along in the diner, marking out the hours with its steady hum. Now it was frozen, hands locked at 3:03, and nothing anyone did could fix it. Grant the mechanic tried rewinding it. Marla replaced the batteries. Even the preacher muttered a prayer over it. Nothing worked. But what unsettled them most was the way the stranger glanced at it every so often, as if that frozen time was exactly as it should be. Sheriff Lawson returned the next day, hand firm on his belt. "You broke that clock?" he demanded. The stranger's eyes didn't shift. "I didn't break it. I stopped it." Lawson's pulse jumped. "Why?" The stranger leaned back, the smile faint, but still carved on his lips. "Because time is where dreams hide. Stop time, and you stop the dream. Isn't that what you wanted?" Marla, listening from the counter, felt her chest tighten. She remembered her wish, whispered weeks ago when she'd thought no one was listening. No more dreams. The stranger was giving them exactly that. But at what cost? By the end of the week, every clock in Greywick stopped. The one above the barbershop froze at 7:15. The school bell wouldn't chime. The church tower's hands locked in place at midnight. Watches, digital timers, even the alarm clocks on nightstands, dead, silent, meaningless, and still the stranger never closed his eyes. Sleep became stranger. People fell into unconsciousness, but not into rest. They drifted in gray emptiness, a kind of waking paralysis, where they swore they could still hear the clink of a spoon stirring coffee or the low hum of neon outside the diner. Dreams had vanished, but so had peace. Greywick grew desperate. Without time, the routines that anchored life collapsed. Farmers didn't know when to water their fields. Shopkeepers didn't know when to open or close. Meals came late, or not at all, and the stranger. He sat in the booth, watching. By now, people avoided the diner altogether. Marla kept the doors locked, but she couldn't bring herself to throw him out. Something about him rooted to that place, as if the booth itself had chosen him. One night, she found herself standing across from him again, trembling. "What are you?" she whispered. The stranger tilted his head. "I am what you made me, a wish given shape, a hunger given form. I am what comes when you no longer want to dream." Marla shook her head. "You're killing us." "No," he said softly. "You're killing yourselves. I'm only keeping watch." The preacher tried again. He gathered the townsfolk in the church, the only place that still felt steady. "We can't live like this," he told them. "We asked for an end to dreams, but dreams are what make us human. They guide us, heal us. Without them, we're unraveling. We have to take them back." "How?" Old Grant rasped. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his cap. "We can't even tell what time it is. Days are blurring together." The preacher's eyes fell heavy. "We confront him, together, tonight," the crowd murmured. Fear buzzed like wasps in their throats. But slowly, one by one, they nodded. That night, Greywick marched to the diner. Doors creaked open, lanterns flickered, and the townsfolk stood shoulder to shoulder outside the glass. Inside, the stranger was waiting. As always, coffee steaming, eyes wide. Reverend Cole stepped forward, heart pounding. "This ends now. You're not welcome here. You've stolen our time, stolen our sleep. We want it back." The stranger looked up slowly, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. For the first time he rose from the booth. The leather seat groaned, as if relieved to let him go. His voice was calm, but it carried like thunder. "You can't take back what you gave away." The room chilled, the lights flickered, and then the diner clock, frozen at 3:03, began to tick backward. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. The townsfolk gasped. Some clutched their heads. A child began to cry. "Time doesn't move for you anymore." The darkness fell heavier than Greywick had ever known. With every street lamp dead, the town seemed to fold in on itself, swallowed by the kind of night that felt alive. Windows glowed faintly from lanterns, but even those flames shivered, as though resisting the weight of something unseen. The stranger stood in the middle of the road, unmoving. He didn't look at the people huddled at their windows. He didn't look at the sheriff, the preacher, or Marla. He just tilted his head back, eyes open, as if he were studying a sky no one else could see. And that was when the sounds began. Whispers, not from the houses or the people, but from the dark itself. Low, rasping voices that slithered between door frames and across the dirt roads. Words no one could quite catch, yet everyone felt their meaning. The voices weren't speaking to Greywick, they were speaking about it. Children cried, farmers clutched their wives, and still the stranger didn't move. Finally, Reverend Cole stepped forward, Bible trembling in his hands. "What are you bringing here?" he shouted, his voice breaking. The stranger lowered his head, gaze settling on him. "Not bringing," he said, "revealing. This is what's always been in the dark." You just didn't see it, because you slept. The crowd recoiled. You don't understand, the stranger continued. You thought dreams were your enemy. You thought nightmares haunted you. But dreams are the walls that keep them out. You wished them away. And now, the walls are gone. The whispers grew louder. Shapes began to stir at the edges of the road. Shadows that didn't belong to trees. Silhouettes that bent wrong when they moved. Marla, heart pounding, stepped forward. If dreams protect us, then why are you here? The stranger's smile flickered. Because someone had to keep watch. Someone had to stay awake, forever. Then help us, she pleaded. Send them back. His face hardened. I can't. You chose this. You gave me your dreams. You gave me your time. Without those, you don't have the walls anymore. And without walls... He gestured toward the shadows now creeping closer, whispers crawling into voices, voices unraveling into shrieks. Everything gets in. The sheriff couldn't take it anymore. He raised his revolver, aiming squarely at the stranger's chest. If you won't stop this, then I will. The crowd gasped. The stranger didn't flinch, didn't blink. Go ahead, he said softly. See if bullets can make me sleep. Lawson's hands trembled. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked through Greywick, echoing off the hills. The stranger didn't fall. The bullet hit his coat, but instead of tearing flesh, it dissolved, crumbling into ash that drifted down the front of his shirt. And the stranger kept smiling. The shadows surged closer now, spilling into the main street, their forms twisting like smoke with teeth. The whispers had turned into screams, filling the air with a noise so loud, it felt like it was inside their skulls. People ran. Mothers dragged children inside. Men slammed shutters closed. The sheriff dropped his gun and staggered backward, pale as death. But the stranger didn't move. He stood at the center of it all, watching, always watching. Marla couldn't run. Something inside her locked her feet to the ground. She thought of her whispered wish weeks ago. God, I wish I could just stop dreaming. She realized now it hadn't been a prayer. It had been a deal. And she'd brought him here. With shaking hands, she stepped closer. If I wished you here, she said, her voice cracking, then maybe I can wish you gone. The stranger's eyes softened just slightly. You can't undo a wish. You can only replace it. Marla's breath caught. Replace it with what? He leaned closer, voice almost tender, almost human, with something stronger, strong enough to hold the dark back. She understood. He was telling her to dream again, to want dreams, even the nightmares, more than she feared them, because without dreams, there was nothing. Marla closed her eyes. She thought of the diner as it used to be, filled with chatter and laughter. She thought of her mother's face, long gone, smiling at her across the counter. She thought of sunrises over Greywick, of fields golden and endless. She thought of stories, of hopes, of fears, all the things that belonged. The air shook with a sound that was neither thunder nor wind, but something deeper, like the world itself was tearing at the seams. The shadows recoiled, writhing, as though the sudden flood of dreams burned them from the inside out. Light spilled through the cracks of Greywick, soft at first, then stronger, pouring from the people themselves. Every dream they dared to hold lit the streets. A boy clutching his wooden horse, an old couple remembering their wedding dance, a farmer praying for rain. And at the center of it all, the stranger stood, no longer smiling. His pale eyes flickered, uncertain. His body seemed thinner now, his coat hanging loose as if the weight of eternity was suddenly too heavy. "You don't understand," he rasped, voice breaking for the first time. "Without me, the walls fall. Without me, the dark wins." Marla stepped forward, heart pounding. "You're wrong," she said. "We don't need you to keep watch. We need each other. We need dreams." The stranger staggered back as if struck. The shadows behind him shrieked, clawing at the ground, desperate to hold on. But the light of Greywick's dreaming burned them into ash. And then, just like that, the night fell silent. The people opened their eyes. The stars were visible again, clear and bright. The street lamps flickered back to life. The stranger was still there, but something had changed. He looked tired. For the first time since he'd come to Greywick, he looked human. "You've taken it back," he whispered. "The dreams, the walls." Marla met his gaze. "It's over. Go." He nodded slowly, almost gratefully. "Then maybe I can finally sleep." His eyes closed, and in the middle of Greywick, the stranger crumbled into dust, carried away on the first warm wind the town had felt in months. Life returned. People dreamed again, some of joy, some of fear, but all of them real. The diner filled with chatter, the fields filled with song, and Marla no longer wished for silence when she laid her head down at night. Because she knew now. Nightmares weren't the enemy. The true horror was a world without dreams at all. And yet, sometimes, when Greywick sleeps, a whisper curls at the edge of their dreams. A whisper that sounds like a voice saying, "Don't stop dreaming. Don't ever stop, or I'll be back."